And what about ye? Well, people that have watched this channel before will know that I had a 2-post lift in here. And well, now I don't, because I've changed to this this double scissor lift that is sunk into the floor. And while we're at it, we did a bit of a refurb. We painted a few of the walls, changed a wee bit of arrangements around, and yeah, so the bench is a mess as usual, but yeah, we've made a wee bit more sort of space. There's a new toolbox in the back, and opened a bit of space up here. So yeah, just a general refurb. This is where the lift pillar used to be, so it used to sit on the deck there, and over here as well, and left about, well, roughly about 3/4 of a meter space from where the pillar used to be to the wall. So yeah, some people said it was mad from going from a 2-post to a scissor, but yeah, it's kind of like this. Every lift has advantages and disadvantages, and yes, for most of the work that I found myself doing, it's at the wheels and stuff like that, suspension and all that there, you know. So, you know, I discovered that every lift has advantages and disadvantages, so therefore I bit the bullet and went for this. So I'm limited on space here, so that's my big problem. So this unit sinks into the floor. So some would say it all depends on what disadvantage that you get with whatever lift that you choose are you willing to put up with. Now 2-post, you know, they're really common. If you've plenty of room, 2-post is probably the way to go, because they're actually relatively cheap. Cheaper compared to this thing. Now this thing here is a Rotary, as you can see. This is pretty sort of high end in the market, sort of price wise. So for a double scissor lift that sinks into the ground, my sort of 2 choices were probably like a twin bush type thing, or something like this Rotary. And I did a lot of my due diligence, and I discovered that this thing here is a bit of a different animal to the cheaper version. So the old saying of you gets what you pays for, you know, it is twice the price. It is expensive, but I only want to be putting this thing in the once. And of course, there's a hell of a lot of work involved in making 2 pits in your floor. So I think a lot of garages sometimes, or a lot of people maybe in general, you know, they go for the 2-post as well, is because, you know, they don't want to modify the floor too much, because it's not their floor, because it's not their building. They're, you know, they're maybe renting it, they're renting a unit or something. Now, this isn't massive of a garage, but I own it, and that's, it's paid for. I don't owe a halfpenny on this. No rent, no mortgage, no nothing. So I can do what I want with this floor. However, this floor has always given me grief because it isn't flat. So I had to do a hell of a work to try and get this sort of trim, and to get these platforms to sort of be as flush as you could get them. It's not perfect, but it's acceptable to me anyway. You know, it's as good as you'll probably get it for a band floor. The other option, you know, you could have dug big sort of pits or whatever, replanted the 2-post lift. However, my 2-post lift was 10 years old, and it was a cheap old lift as to start with. So I decided, right, we'll just do a complete change and do something completely different. But anywho, these pits, yes, there's quite a bit of work involved, and yeah, we'll show you a bit of that, and afterwards I'll tell you a wee bit about this unit and why I went for this one and didn't go for the cheaper one. So this guy's name is Roy, and he has his own concreting business, and he's been doing this for a number of decades. So he was telling me he's 58 years of age, loves what he does, has no intention of stopping. And well, he was a godsend in this project, because he was able to tell me what was good, what was bad, what worked and what didn't work. Just thought I would show you the way that we went about this and the reasons why we did what we did. So you may notice in the wee clips there, we'll have bits of wood going along the sides of the pits here. Now, to get that bit of concreting done, these have been lifted, and I've just put them down temporarily for this wee piece of video. So we'll have them packed up. This floor, fundamentally, this floor is off a mile. So there's a fall in the floor. It basically falls down that way. So it's higher here and it's lower over here. So there's a fall in the floor. But there are places where it's like the Himalayas. Now, this bit in the middle that you can see, you know, grey as opposed to the old blue paint that I had on it. I have grinded that ground it because there was humps in it, and especially here we can see where it dives down. And before I ground all that sort of light grey stuff, that bit there was more pronounced. So it's lower at the front here. It's lower at the front than it is at the back. So the floor is all over the place. And to be quite honest with you, you know, it's a garage floor, and you know, unless it's put down, professionally rubbed up and all that whenever it's installed. But this it's a decent enough floor, but it's not 100% level. I don't think you're ever going to get a floor. So we can see it at the back here. So it looks, you would think that you know, it's deeper here than it is there, shallow. And yeah, that's correct. That's if you're using the floor level as a reference. But our floor's off, so we can't use that as a reference. So anyway, that's why we'll have these beams. So the floor's no good as a reference, can't use it. So we'll make our own reference, which we know to be true. So we'll put 4 beams along the pits, and I had to change the thickness of the beams as I went along. So that's slightly thicker height-wise than that one, and then it gets slower or lower, and then thinner over there, because that there is the highest on the floor. So what I had to do then was pack it here and there, you know, and they're just temporarily put in just for demonstration, and then screw it to the deck with plugs and screws and what have you. Screw it to the floor, and then we can get a level off those 4 pieces of wood. So we can bring our spirit level. Let's see. So we need to get it level in this direction. There. You know, on all 4. Now it's not going to be 100% at the minute, because these are, where am I? It's not going to be 100% at the minute because they're just sitting there. They're not. These have been lifted and put down again temporarily for this demonstration. So we can put the level across that way, and you know, we get it, pack it out in all the places, nail it down so it's secure, and we know that it's level that way and also across the way. So that bit there is level with that bit. Floor reference, no good, so you can't use it. So that is a different reference, which is true. So then what I did was, bring you up here. So I made this paddle. I call it magic paddle. And the depth that we want it to be is, according to the specs of the unit, is 110 mil. So this line that I drew across is 110 mil. So clearly it's not going to be to there because we have it raised. So you can pick the depth. So I took it from nearly the highest point, which is here. So what do we see? So if I put that in, there they go. You know? So our line is there. I'll bring it forward a wee bit. So this will maybe show you how off this is. So there's our line at 110, which is the depth of the lift. And there's how off it is there. But I know, and we know, because what this is sitting on is level on both sides. Level with respect to each other. We know that that surface here is level, which is what matters. And that concrete in there is level with respect to that one. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, you probably won't see that on any other YouTube video that you'll see on anybody doing the like of this, but that's how you get the level if your floor's off. I'll just show you the specs. So ds35, it's got a wee bit wet there. So anyway, depth is 110 to whatever surface level you decide upon. So in an ideal world, it would be your floor surface, or the surface of, you know, if you're putting another covering on it, like tiles or something, you know, you include that. But, you know, as long as we meet 110, and then whenever I go to tile all this, I'm going to tile all this round, you know, I can, you know, change that level so the tiles meet the ramp. So anyway, that'll be another bit of a mucking about, but sure. Couple of pipes, and then yes, 160 mil concrete, C20/30 quality under a recessed floor. So we have 9 to 10. It's about 230 mil to 250. This one here is a wee bit deeper. But the thing about this is, the thing about doing this job is that, you know, this garage floor, it is what it is, and unless you rip it out and do it completely all again, but you know, you'll have a floor that's good enough to accept a ramp of any description, where it's a 2-post or whatever it is, you know. This floor, because it's off so badly, it's thinner in places and thicker in other places and all that, but now we have control over, I have control over, and I know what depth this concrete is and what grade it is. So we put in 35 Newton, so that's 35 Newton per millimeter squared concrete. There's fibres in it, and so we know the strength. There's a few bits of rebar sunk down pretty low, and it's average depth 9 to 10 inches, which is way more than the specification. So it's a higher strength concrete than the specification, and it's deeper, and it's reinforced as well with a couple of bits of rebar. So what we did we put a couple of wheel bars in, threw a couple of bits of rebar in, and then tramped them down in, and then, you know, kept pouring. So that's the easy way to do rebar. You see people putting meshes in and tying them all together and all. Well, you can do it if you want, like. So anyway, so our concrete is down about 2 weeks, roughly, maybe a wee bit more. And yeah, we're still working on these edges. Now, these edges, I want them to be level, just purely so it's level with the unit, you know, the scissor lift that's going to go in this recess. So it's more sort of cosmetic. This is our highest point at this side, and it goes low towards the wall. So that's the fall in the floor. So anywho, right, well, we know that this is level. See this here? So we know that that's level. Let's have a look. Turn it around that way if you want. So there's level. So I want this edge to be as level as I can get it, and you know, a sort of a decent height. What I don't want is when I reverse the car in, you know, it's going to hit this. You know, I don't want a step. So I've been working away at grinding this level. It was up and down like a Himalayas. So let's see, I can turn this dial here on. And we can get a laser line. This is a wee bit, it's not too bad, but I'll just spin it around a bit. A couple of mil in the middle there. Pretty negligible. It's, yeah, there's a wee bit maybe to go there. But the main bit is this back bit. I don't want the wheel to hit that, you know. So it'll just, it'll end up breaking it off, chipping it or whatever. I'm going to be probably putting some sort of surround around it, an angle, aluminium angle or something, you know, like as a trim piece, really. But it's not too bad. It's 10 times, million times better than what it was, I can tell you. So yeah, we'll maybe do another couple of passes with the grinder, and yeah, you need to be wearing a good respirator for doing this sort of stuff. So there was a 3-month waiting time on getting this thing, and that allowed for the concrete to get good and hard, and it allowed me to do a bit of painting. Oh, these mechanical type anchor bolts that were in the 2-post lift, whenever they stop tightening up and just keep turning and turning, well, it's time to do something different. So I bought this delivered and installed. So those guys were the installers who have installed bucket loads of these things. These rotaries are common where I live. In a lot of dealers have them, and Quick Fit, you know, in the UK it's like a company that changes tires and what have you. They use them as well, and I was talking to a few of the guys that were using them, and that was all part of my research, you know. But a significant difference with this thing here in comparison to a lot of the cheaper ones. Rotary, this isn't unique to Rotary. There's a few makes that sort of do this, and if we can focus in, there we are. Let me see. The redundant double master slave hydraulic system makes it possible to dispense additional safety catches, double safety, which prevents lifting or lowering on one side. So overflow installation as well. So this thing can it can go on top of the floor, or it can go into a recess, which is what I did. So it can be mounted both ways. So yeah, there we go. The other thing, like the construction of this, you know, you can tell the thickness of the metal and all that sort of jazz. And there's other subtle sort of, it's just engineered better than some of the cheaper ones out there. And I'll give you one example. So these things here flop down. I think it's 65 degrees. I think I read somewhere. A lot of the other ones, you know, they would sit maybe like that. You know, they don't come down in as much for to clear your wheel and what have you. So, and the roller at the front, that yellow thing, it just hits that metal box and then flattens out. So, yeah. And what makes that different from those other ones that I talked about, you know, the sort of cheaper models? So this thing has 4 rams, 2 there and 2 there, and one is slightly thicker than the other one. So you have a master slave type arrangement, and you have 2 hydraulic circuits, 2 separate hydraulic circuits. So the other sort of cheaper ones would only have 1 hydraulic circuit, and then it sort of tees off, you know, that type of thing. So what they say is, and well, I have actually tested it because I've had this thing up and I have disconnected one of these hydraulic lines and nothing happens. So, you know, these platforms, incidentally, each of these platforms is roughly about 450 kilograms, so it's nearly half a ton each. So there's half a ton there, nearly half a ton there, and that's without a car on it, you know. So that's why I got the guys to install it. I just, you know, I have an engine crane and stuff like that, but there's been some handling putting that into the floor, you know, without that crane arrangement those guys had, and they just knew what they were at. They just connected it up, you know. It was as if they could do it in their sleep, you know. They've put that many of these things in. Anyway, what happens is we'll have a hydraulic circuit going to the master, and then if we can see, there's an outlet pipe here, see at the top, and that comes out this middle hose. So that's that middle hose, and that middle hose goes over to the slave on this one, the smaller ram. And similarly then, we'll have the outlet pipe on the master here, and that goes down the middle hose and over to the slave ram on this one. So they're both interconnected together hydraulically. And then on this particular model as well, we'll have this is an air breather pipe coming out off the top there, and it makes it so easy to bleed, you know. It more or less bleeds itself. So there's an override button in the control unit which overrides the Hall limit switches. And that's another thing. So we have Hall effect limit switches. That's so it knows that it's down, that's for up. And the other ones have, you know, the electromechanical ones that sit in the pit. You know, it's just like a micro switch. But these have a a Hall effect. It works like, you know, your camshaft sensor. So anywho, an override button then overrides that, and it allows it to run the pump, and it just circulates the hydraulic fluid, and any air then just goes back to the cylinder through that plastic pipe. And there's one over here as well. So yeah, those rubber mats, by the way, I put them down myself. There was no protection on the hoses, which I thought was a bit, didn't really like that idea, so I just put that. That is like a mat you would get for a stable or something. It's about 10 mil thick, so that is pretty a permanent thing. It's just to stop things from dropping in, you know, like a hammer or a wishbone or a spring or something. So anyway, I think that's about it to show you this 3.5 ton lift. By the way, the cheaper ones are rated at 3 ton, and the guys were telling me that put it in, you know, they installed both tapes, and they were just saying that this is twice the lift. It's easy to set up, it's easy to bleed. Some of the cheaper ones, one of the guys actually said at one point, he says, you're at it for hours bleeding it. You know, you're a few hours installing the thing, and you're a few hours bleeding it. So you probably can, it's a bit dark up in there, but yeah. So it's brave and thick metal, and it's well built. And well, you like to think the Rotary brand, they've been making lifts for donkeys, so they're bound to know what they're at. So anywho, we'll see how it works out, see what limitations it's going to have. Oh yeah, hold on, I forgot about one thing. As a result of these hydraulics, there are no safety locks. So there's no like ratcheting mechanism, you know, and on the cheaper models, because it hasn't got an advanced hydraulic system as such, advanced, you have mechanical safety locks, which on the double scissors tend to be released with air. So every time you use a lift, you need to have an air compressor run to blow the locks as such. On mid-raise type lifts, sort of cheaper ones that have, you know, the bars that go in between them, I'm sure you've seen them, you know, they would have electromechanical releases, but again, it's because, you know, you have like a ratchet mechanism somewhere along the line where it goes click, 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 and there needs to be some mechanism, something to release that. With the double scissors, as I said, it's usually with air. And as soon as I seen that, I says, that means you need an air compressor running all the time. And I have air in the garage here, of course, but you know, every time you want the lift to go down, you need to have the compressor running. I don't have my compressor running all the time, like, you know. The other thing as well with the mechanical safety locks is you then have predetermined heights, predetermined positions where this ramp can go. So it can only be at a lock position, a lock position, a lock position. And I found that with the 2-post lift. So I have a height restriction here. There's the ceiling. It's about 9 foot high or something. So, you know, I couldn't ever get the car right up. I always had to be lower so it would sit in a lock. So the fact that this hasn't got any safety locks whatsoever, it might be a wee bit disconcerting initially, but you know, Rotary isn't, I said this I think before, the Rotary isn't the only one that does this. There are other makes in this sort of high-end type lift that does not have safety locks. Anyway, I'll show you what these things here are. These things here are an optional extra. So 2,000 kilograms upside down, that one there. So these are from Rotary, these beams that go across, but you don't get that with the lift. You have to order them extra, and they're not that bad. They're not too dear, to be honest with you. You know, they're not stupidly expensive. So that slides about, and it goes up and down on a thread, you know. So the idea of those things is for vehicles with ladder chassis, and you can bring them in. So Jeeps, 4x4s, stuff like that, Land Rovers, stuff that has ladder chassis that you're not lifting, you know, with the ordinary jacking points. So clearly, you know, of course, you don't lift it on the jacking points with the metal. You get a load of rubber blocks there of different thicknesses, and that's what you put on underneath. And so there's no mucking about with arms going out and trying to find the jacking point and all, which sometimes with my old 2-post lift you sort of struggle with, you know. So you just throw one of them blocks in underneath where you wanted to lift it by, you know. And obviously for longer wheelbase vehicles, you just lift her up and extends her out. But these things here are yeah, worthwhile, I think, with this scissor lift. So what I'm trying to do with this is, you know, make it as versatile as I can. These platforms, as I said maybe earlier, are a wee bit longer than a lot of the cheaper ones. They're also a bit wider as well, and the flop down bit is the same width. So some of them aren't as wide, but these are the same width, but they're about an inch or maybe 2 inches wider than normal. Also, what I liked about this one as well, this is a silly thing, like, but a lot of them have an external handle, so you have to put your hand down in where you can just put your hand on the top. That's a simple thing, you know, but yeah. I forgot something else, so I'm just going to show you another thing. Underneath here, so we have these rollers that hit that stainless steel plate coming down. So that means whenever it comes down, it hits there and it slows the descent way down, so it makes it very controlled. Now, a lot of other lifts have this sort of seesaw pivoting arrangement, so the rams aren't directly connected to the scissor. They're via this fulcrum here. So there's a good lot of them I see have something like that, so that's not unique to this. But what this also has is this thing here, which is called a cushion, and it flops about there because it's adjustable. So that stops it from clanking down, you know, whenever it falls into the ground or right down. You know, that hits the top of that, so it stops that. I'll just see if I can show you that. It slows down on the descent. There. And then the lower limit switch then prevents any further going down. So that's so your toes don't get caught or something. And you have to change buttons to this one and you get a very annoying beep. And in she goes. So there we go. It's reasonably level. It's high-ish in places. There's a wee bit of a step over here. That's not too bad, you know. Pretty negligible. I had to sort of compromise the levels of the floor, so to try and make it so that there's nothing exceptional in any place. And then I put that aluminium trim around it. And they were the original tiles that were on the floor, the original plastic tiles. So we put it all then back down again. So there we go. Maybe you get something out of it. Maybe you enjoyed that. I doubt whether anybody is going to go out and run out and buy one of these. I don't work for this company. I don't represent anybody. I paid for all this myself and it cost a fortune. So where are we, Pappy?
Hello?
Where are we?
I just can't remember.
The Rinka?
The Rinka.
And what are we getting in the Rinka?
Ice cream and toys.